Every morning we try to learn new verses from Sastra. So we memorize the verses, and this is how we make relation with Krishna. Because especially this book, the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is described to be the form of Krishna. Each canto is part of his divine form. The first canto is his feet. The 10th canto is his beautiful lotus face. So we're memorizing the form of Krishna by memorizing the verses of Sastra. And Krishna says in the Bhagavatam, Satam prasanga mama virya samvido bhavanti hritkarna rasayana kata. That the discussions about my nature spoken by saintly persons are invested with all of my power. So when we hear Sastra, especially authorized scripture from sadhus, then all of Krishna's power, his Shakti, is present within that. And it's described Bhavanti Hritkarna Rasayana. It enters through the ear and it enters within the heart and it acts as a Rasayana. So in Ayurvedic terms, a Rasayana is something that is a rejuvenator, gives vitality and life. So there's a spiritual Rasayana. Just like there's spiritual alchemy. When we talk about, there's this famous novel, The Alchemist, right? And it's mostly allegory. It's very popular. Have you read The Alchemist? Okay, so the real alchemist is the process of Bhakti Yoga. There's a verse in our scripture that actually says exactly that. Yata kanchana tam jati. It says that just like iron or copper and different metals can be transformed into gold by a special process of alchemy, similarly, a living entity, like a human being, can be transformed into a spiritual being, fully realized by the process of Bhakti Yoga, specifically by the Guru's initiation, Harinam and Diksha. This is what Sastra describes to be spiritual alchemy. It means a complete spiritual transformation. But how is that happening? Through the process of hearing. The process of hearing is the process of spiritual alchemy. Because what happens is Rasayana Kata, the glories of Sri Krishna, enter into the heart through the ears, and they start churning the heart. Just like Samudra Manthan, when you churn the ocean of milk, this is an allegory for our own spiritual life. What is the ocean of milk? It's the ocean of potential. So you can think of your life from the time you were a baby. You're like an ocean of potential. And according to your schooling, according to your upbringing, and according to your inherent swabhav, your nature, your potential will start to manifest. So Samudra Manthan means Rasayana Kata is churning the ocean and bringing out what's inside. When we churn the ocean, in the story in the Bhagavatam, what first comes? Poison. But we shouldn't be afraid of that. We see this often in spiritual life, that these are what is called anarthas. We may be living in an ordinary life and be very happy and peaceful, but if we start the process of bhakti, then it's like poison may come. It means it's like we're coming into a very clean atmosphere, and then anything that is unclean, you feel very uncomfortable and it starts coming to the surface. And you start thinking, let me get clean. And so this is Samudra Manthan. The poison starts to come out. It means it's good. The poison that is within you should be removed. Let it come out. And we shouldn't worry about that, because God is arranging this whole process. And Lord Shiva is taking responsibility. He is Tamanas. He destroys all darkness. So when it came out, what happened? All the devatas prayed to Lord Shiva to protect them. And he very happily took it in his hands and he drank it and he kept it here and became Nilakant. So there's nothing to worry about. What came out next? All the beautiful, wonderful things. Finally, Amrit, the nectar, right? In the story. What is the Amrita? Amritasya putra. We are children of that Amrita. This is Shastra's, what Krishna says. Amritasya putra. We are children of absolute bliss. Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, we are his children. And so spiritual transformation means awakening our latent potential of our relationship with Krishna, what we call our dormant love of God. Just like when you light a ghee wick to do arati, what is the symbolic mood and meaning there? We're offering the ghee lamp like the soul offering itself to God. We are the small flame offering ourselves to the entire substance of the ultimate reality. And saying, oh Lord, now I'm offering myself to you. Please embrace me and accept me as your own. So this is our Krishna consciousness movement. It's very important to understand what is Krishna consciousness, what is our objective, and how can we serve the world. We are essentially charity workers. Sadhus or temples and gurus, they are charity workers. Why? Because we're giving the greatest charity. The greatest charity is performing this process of spiritual alchemy, by which the soul, which has been in this sojourn of samsara, worldly existence, since time immemorial, and finally brought to the higher land, to Braj, to Sri Krishna and our eternal residence there. Therefore, Shastra says this is not our real home. Our real home is in Goloka Vrindavan. Our real home is in the spiritual realm, Vaikuntha. This is not just like a sweet mood, like something to make people feel good. This is in Shastra. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the soul is something, it's from a higher land, and our destiny is to go to that higher reality. However, we can serve in this world also. Like you have your nature, you want to serve, you want to help women, you want to help people. That means you have a sadhu quality. Jasmine, sadhu. You're a sadhu. Sadhu is anyone who looks at the good in others and wants to help others. So you're a sadhu also. Don't think you're not sadhu, right? Your heart is sadhu. Rupan Kumar, you're sadhu. Wendy, sadhu. Why? Because you want to help people. You don't want to harm people. You want to genuinely serve and help people. Gadadhar, sadhu. So we are welfare workers. But we're welfare workers of a genre or a niche that is underserved. Therefore, our service is very important because the needs of the people are underserved. What does that mean? Genuine, loving, compassionate, spiritual help. Not exploitation, not cheating, not helping people in the name of spirituality, only looking at them like dollar signs. How much can I extract from this person? How much can I extract from this person? How much? No. The real sadhu is described to be like the sun that shines down its rays of illumination equally to all. This is the nature of sadhu. Whatever is given to sadhu, it's described in the Bhagavatam. Whatever sadhu receives, they receive it like the sun collects water from the earth, stores it in clouds just so that it can rain it down upon them. So the sun is the charity worker. Without the sun, we wouldn't have life. So without Guru and Sadhu, our life wouldn't be meaningful because we would remain stuck in the lower modes of existence. We wouldn't perform this spiritual alchemy. To help an alchemist, you need help from someone who's an alchemist. If you don't know the process yourself, even like a doctor can't do their own heart surgery. You may be a heart surgeon, but to do heart surgery, you need another person's assistance. So this is the nature of sadhu. And today we're going to talk about Krishna consciousness, but an integral part of the Krishna consciousness process is that who is Krishna conscious? They can bestow Krishna consciousness. So when we say Krishna consciousness, what we should be asking is, who is Krishna conscious? that can invoke Krishna consciousness and help us in that process of spiritual alchemy. Alchemy doesn't mean what wasn't there transforms to something different. It means whatever potency you have to bring it out, whatever potential you have to bring it out. And that's important. That's what good schooling does. Like, you are very intelligent, but if you were never in a proper environment that would bring out your highest traits, then your growth would be stunted. So our meditation for today should be, it shouldn't be written in our obituary potential. When our obituary is written, it shouldn't say potential. It should say realized potential, realize their full potential. So how do we realize our full potential? That itself is a very deep process of introspection and study. What is our highest potential as a soul? The process of Bhakti Yoga is the most direct and the best because it helps us realize our fullest potential as a spark of divine consciousness. Amritasya putra is what Shastra describes. Krishna says, you are my energy. Mamai vangso jiva loke. The living entities are my potency. So therefore, you're not going to be fully happy. Our Gurudev said, Bhakti is like the arti lamp that's being offered to Krishna. Krishna is the divine sum and substance of all being, and we are the spark of being. And we are offering ourselves to the source in a relationship of love, Bhakti Yoga. That is yoga. Our Gurudev would say, yoga is prayer. Gurudev would say, this is the symbol of Bhakti Yoga. Universal symbol of prayer. What does it mean? What is the meaning behind the symbol? Gurudev would say, this is the Atma, this is Paramatma, the soul in God. And bringing the hands together is bringing together the union of the soul with God. That is Bhakti Yoga. That is the Krishna consciousness movement. So I want to get into a few verses here and just meditate on that idea. How to become Krishna conscious? You need to find someone who is Krishna conscious and take shelter of them, and they can invoke that potential within you. Like Krishna calling the flute. When he played on the flute, who was he calling? The gopis. Sometimes he plays the flute and calls the cows. But whoever this message is, whoever is ready to receive the message, they'll hear the message. Therefore, sadhu is like the sun, giving sun rays to everyone. But if you're hiding in a cave, you won't see the sunlight. But the sadhus are very merciful. They travel around the world. Srila Prabhupada or Srila Gurudev. They're like the sun, but also the sun moves. So similarly, sadhu travels. Nanda Maharaj prayed to Garg Muni, Mahadvi chalanam ninam grihinam dina chetasam nishreya shaya. You travel only for the welfare of others. Sadhus are welfare workers. Not expecting anything, not looking for anything, not needing anything. Our mood is here also. This is for you to know about us. We don't expect or need anything because Krishna already is providing everything. Because we have relationship with Krishna, we have faith. Oh, Krishna, whatever you want to give, you'll send. Whatever is needed and helpful for us, you'll send. Why should I make extraneous effort to pick up broken pieces of plastic and glass while dropping a diamond in my hands? Krishna and our relationship with Krishna, this is the most precious jewel. And yet foolishly, especially as supposed sadhus, we put down Krishna and we go searching after Chanchal Lakshmi, money, fame, followers, putting aside Krishna. If we just cherish Krishna, like for example, Haridas Thakur, a great saint. Have you heard of Haridas Thakur? He chanted 3 lakhs Harinam, like I was telling you about our sadhu in Vrindavan. He chants 2 lakhs every day. Haridas Thakur would chant 196 rounds every day of the Mahamantra. 108 times 198. A lot of rounds. Means in 9 years, you chant 1 billion names. So our Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur chanted 1 billion names also. So this lady approached him to try to seduce him. He said, no problem. He wasn't averse to her. He said, sit down, hear me chant. When I'm finished, I'll try to satisfy your desires. He was completely detached. She listened to him for 3 days, and then her heart completely transformed. That process of spiritual alchemy occurred because of the potency of the Krishna conscious person and their presence. So it's described that the guru or sadhu is like the sun. Sit near them, don't hide in a cave. then the sun rays will automatically come. If you're fortunate enough to be near a Bhav Bhakta, especially someone who has pure love for Krishna, merely by their association, all success is guaranteed. Myself, I feel whatever service I can do in this life for Krishna and for Guru is only because of the great fortune of living my life, the majority of my life, in the presence of pure lovers of God. I met my Srila Gurudev when I was 9 years old. I met Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj when I was younger. He came to New Braj. I was probably 5 or 6. And I went every year to see Srila Gurudev. And then I lived 15, 16 years since 2005 to 2020 in the association of pure lovers of God, pure devotees, someone who is radiating love of God. And by being in their presence, that's why you should come to Vrindavan. Being in the presence of someone who's just radiating love of God. Simply being in that association and having an open heart means being ready to receive it. You don't want too much sunblock. Sitting in their presence, ready to receive that love, then that process of spiritual alchemy will begin. You won't know what happened to Jasmine and how she's become Jasmine Mahant. She's become Mahant. Why? Not because that was in you, but who was there to call it out from? Like I said, don't let potential be written in your obituary. It should be written, realized their fullest potential as a lover of God and as a well-wisher of all humanity and all beings. That should be what is said about you. Realized their full potential as a lover of God and helped all of humankind, all of the world. So that's why I said we are charity workers. The greatest form of charity is Krishna Kirtan. Kirtan has two features. Kirtan means speaking about Krishna and singing about Krishna. We do both. Kirtan means anything you're doing to glorify and establish the relationship between the soul and God, Atma and Paramatma. That is Kirtan. So when we serve Mahaprasad, that is a form of Kirtan. When we pass out our spiritual literature, that is a form of Kirtan. When we come together and sing, that is Kirtan. And especially when we speak about Krishna, that is Kirtan. These are all forms of Kirtan. So our movement is based on two things: hearing and speaking and singing. Speaking or singing, Kirtan and Shravan, hearing. Hearing is how that alchemy begins. Whatever misconceptions will come out. And then we have to be ready to give them up. Spiritual life doesn't just mean adopting what is favorable. It means giving up what is unfavorable. That's spiritual life. That's why when you churn the ocean of milk, the poison has to come out first. The beautiful thing, though, and we will get to the verses, before the poison comes out, you don't have to worry, because you're going to meet the person who will be like a mother holding you in their arms. And so then when you go through your surgery, you're feeling completely secure and protected in their association. Why? Krishna himself came and helped. He himself was the churning apparatus, the support for the churning. In the ocean churning, Kurmadev, one of the avatars of the Lord, he himself was the platform, foundation upon which the churning was possible. And they brought Mount Meru and put it on his back, and they used Vasuki, the divine serpent, as the churning rope. So in our spiritual life, all these personalities have helped churn our heart, all arranging this process, and they're there to care for us. Lord Shiva was there to take the poison. So everything is there. We shouldn't be afraid of spiritual growth, but it also means we have to be ready to give something up. All right. So yesterday we learned a very beautiful verse. It's about how we can become Krishna conscious. And we'll do this for another 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll be finished. And then we go to the temple. So there's a really beautiful conversation between Yudhisthira Maharaj, the eldest of the Pandavas, and Narad Muni, who is the sage of the demigods, one of the greatest devotees of Krishna. In the Mahabharata, do you know the story of Shishupal? Heard the story of Shishupal? Okay. You have to join our Thursday groups every Thursday, 7 a.m. So you can learn about all these amazing people. It's very interesting what Srila Prabhupada says here in Bhagavatam. It's very sweet. Because the sadhu, they're speaking from realization and relationship. If we're not a sadhu, we speak from theory and speculation and intelligence. We speak from our head. Sadhu speaks from the realization in their heart. So there's a story of Shishupal. Shishupal was someone who hated Krishna with every fiber of his being. He hated him and he always spoke ill of him. When he was a little boy, he just started abusing Krishna. And when Krishna was doing the Rajasuya Yagya, you've heard of the Rajasuya Yagya? Yudhisthira Maharaj was doing this amazing sacrifice that was going to help all his forefathers. And Krishna was accepted as like the most important person by all the different elders. But Shishupal couldn't tolerate this, so he hurled abuses at Krishna. But he had received a boon that Krishna wouldn't hurt him. He could abuse him as much as he liked, but by the time it came to his, I think 108, right? The 108th insult in a row, then Krishna said, then at that point, his boon was taken off.
His mom made that boon.
His mom made the boon. So he was standing there, Krishna was there, and all the royal assembly was there, all the princes and all the sages were all witnessing this event, and Krishna was giving his abhishek. They were bathing Krishna's lotus feet. And Shishupal standing up as like a heckler, you know, and he started hurling the worst insults imaginable. You know, in Hindi gali, there's a lot of good gali. So he started doing Hindi gali, 1, 2, 15. Everyone was watching and Krishna didn't say anything. And people went to stop him and Krishna said, no, let him speak. Let all the poison come out, no problem. So one thing that Prabhupada says here, and Narad Muni says, God isn't affected by our praise or by our blasphemy. Just to summarize, because if we read through the whole thing, it'll take a long time. It'll take a few hours. So I'm summarizing a few points. Very interesting section here. Krishna or God isn't affected by our praise or by our blasphemy. He is equal. He is equipoised. In the Gita, Krishna says, Samoham sarva bhuteshu. I'm equal to all. I don't have enmity towards anyone. I'm equal to all. But if you love me, I am bound to you in return. Because Krishna also says in the Gita, I am bound to reciprocate with you because I am God and I take a pledge. This is Upanishad. Nityo nityanam chetanaschetanan eko bahunam yo vidadati kamam. God is a wish fulfiller. He fulfills desires. That's why we're living in this world, because we desire to live in this world independently. So he says, Tatastu, so be it. So he is equal. If you praise him or blaspheme him, he is equal to both. Simply, if you become absorbed in him, you'll be liberated. So Shishupal was abusing Krishna. Finally, after 108, Krishna said, yes, finally, you're ready to be liberated. And Krishna took his Sudarshan chakra and cut off his head. Instantly, his Atma came out like a jyoti, like a lamp. And everyone there in the assembly saw the soul like a jyoti, like a lamp. Like I said, the Arti lamp is being offered in Arti. In this way, we're offering the soul to God. This is Diwali. This is Deepavali. So this jyoti of Shishupal entered the feet of Krishna. Everyone was astonished. So that's how this conversation in this section of the Bhagavatam is Canto 7, Chapter 1. Narad speaks from text 23. This is the context. Yudhisthira Maharaj asked Narad Muni, how is it possible that Shishupal, who is the worst antagonist of the Lord, Shishupal and Dantavakra were brothers. Before, they were Ravan and Kumbhakarna, right? Before that, they were Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So they lived through 3 lives: Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravan, Kumbhakarna, Shishupal, Dantavakra. They were like the worst enemies of the Lord. So Narad Muni was asked, how did they get salvation, liberation? By throwing insults at the Lord. You should go to hell for blasphemy. He said, no, the Lord isn't affected by your blasphemy or your praise. He is like the sun giving welfare to all. However you approach him, he bestows benediction upon you. What Prabhupada says in the translation here, and actually Narad Muni also says, it's very sweet. In these verses, it says, this was witnessed by everyone. Everyone saw this happen. So there was tens of thousands of people there. They all saw the Atma come like a light, like a Jyoti lamp, and enter the feet of Krishna and get liberation, mukti. And so Prabhupada writes in his purport, this is not a story. It was witnessed by everyone. So a mundane scholar would say, but it's written in a story. But the relationship of Prabhupada with Sastra and Krishna is, he's saying, obviously it's not a story. Tens of thousands of people were there watching it happen. From a mundane perspective, we think, oh, this Bhagavatam is a story, Gita is a story, Christ is a story, everyone is a story unless it was on Facebook yesterday. But even on Facebook, Facebook stories, Instagram stories, stories are not a new thing. It's an ancient thing. And Mahabharata is not a story, it is fact. Mahabharata is not a story, it's fact. So Prabhupada said everyone saw it happen. So it's not a story. It's very sweet. He said this was truth. So Narad Muni answered that Krishna is unaffected by praise or blasphemy. However you approach him, you can achieve salvation. And so there's a famous verse that I'll read here. Just before that, he says, we think of praise and blasphemy because we're attached to this conception of life. But God is much beyond that. He has no material body. He has no false conception of I and mine. It is therefore incorrect to think that he feels pleasure or pain when blasphemed or offered prayers. So even when we praise Krishna, when we do Kirtan, Vandanam, we're not doing it for him so much as for us. We should understand that. It's not that God needs our prayers. He is with his gopis, with the Brajabasis, completely happy. But when we do Kirtan for Krishna, this is beneficial to us because it's establishing our relationship with him. So I want to get to the point of what is real bhakti. And then we'll stop for today. So this is a very interesting verse, okay? Tasmad vairānubandena nirvarena bhaina va snehat kamena va yunjat katanchin nekshate pritak. By enmity or by bhakti, by fear, by affection, or by lusty desire. By all of these or any one of them, if a conditioned soul somehow or other concentrates his mind upon the Lord, the result is the same. For the Lord, because of his blissful position, is never affected by enmity or friendship. Simply, we must become Krishna conscious. Think of Krishna, and then we get liberation. So now the reason I'm telling this is because there's a gradation. What is special about pure bhakti compared to liberation? So we can get liberation. There's a beautiful verse. So this is text 30, chapter 1, canto 7. Very beautiful verse. Kama dveshad bayat sneha dyata bhakteshware mana avishyataragam hitva bhavastad gatim gata. It's a very reassuring verse. Sometimes people say, oh, it's like impossible to get liberation. Maybe 1 in a trillion people, 1 in billions and billions. But here, Narad Muni, who is our guru, who we accept his words as truth. Many, many persons have attained liberation. It says, Bhavastad gatim gata. Bhavas means many. Many persons have attained liberation simply by thinking of Krishna with great attention. That is Krishna consciousness. The Krishna consciousness movement is simply about thinking about Krishna with great attention. That's all we have to do. So that's why we have the temple. That's why we have the murti of Krishna. People say, what is this murti? The murti is arranged by Krishna. In the 11th canto, he tells Uddhava, manifest my murti, accept garments from my murti, offer food to my murti, because then this will help you be absorbed in me. And being absorbed in me is the way to get liberation. So by lust, by being an antagonist or inimical feelings, by fear, by affection, or by devotional service. These 5 ways are how we can approach Krishna. And then there's a verse, he describes examples. Gopya kamad bhayat kamso dveshach chaidya dhayo nipraha sambandad brishniya snehad yuyam bhaktya vayam vibo. The gopis, because they loved Krishna. Narad Muni is saying, even just so we can understand, even though it looked like they were lusty after Krishna, because of that, he's giving this as an example. Even if you have, that's why Krishna is so attractive. You can see him as the most beautiful person and develop lust for him. But if this helps you be absorbed in him, then this is good. Kamad. Bhayat Kamso, like Kamsa, his uncle, was afraid of Krishna. He was so afraid of Krishna, he constantly thought of him. Dvesach, by enmity, like Shishupal. So Narad Muni is mentioning Shishupal. And by his family, the Yadavas, by their kinship, by their affection, like family members. Brishniya Snehad. And by the devotees, Bhakti, they all achieved salvation. So these are the ways we can approach Krishna. The main thing is the importance of Krishna consciousness. That's why Srila Prabhupada coined this term with great thought. He called it the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, to encourage us to develop consciousness towards Krishna. It's said in the Bhagavad Gita, yang vapi swadam bhavam tejatyante kalevaram tam avaiti kunte saratad bhava bhavita. Anyhow, think about me. If you think about me at the time of death, you'll come to my eternal abode. So our whole process is going to that point where we can ultimately think of Krishna at the time of death. So I want to read the first line here of Srila Prabhupada's purport, which is very sweet. And this is kind of the essence of what we're talking about, Krishna consciousness. We had this discussion in the morning yesterday. Why don't we just hate God? Because it's easier to hate something than love something sometimes. So we had this discussion. What does everyone think? What do you think, Rupa Kumari? So we just decide we should just hate Krishna and always think about him. Oh, that Krishna, I'm going to get him. Is that proper Krishna consciousness? So what is the Krishna consciousness that Srila Prabhupada is referring to? This is the crux of the matter. Why are we not teaching people to hate Krishna? We're teaching them to love Krishna, because we're talking about Krishna consciousness as taught by Srila Rupa Goswami. And Srila Prabhupada, Krishna consciousness is in Hindi, Srila Prabhupada defined it as Krishna Bhavana Amrita, the nectar of absorption in Sri Krishna. And so therefore, Srila Prabhupada says here in his purport, the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's very important to understand what is our upasya, or our object of worship, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Rupa Goswami. In the purport to text 30, chapter 1, Srila Prabhupada says, the first thing he says, and this is talking about real Krishna consciousness. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33-39, purport by Srila Prabhupada. What is the verse? Malini knows it. When I mentioned this line, I said, what verse is Prabhupada going to say? What verse is Prabhupada going to say? Vikriditam vrajavadubiridam cha Vishnu shradhanvito anusuyat atavarna yadya bhakting parang bhagavati pratilabhya kamam hridrogamasvapi hinoti achirena dhira. This is the crux here. This is the essence of it all. How to become Krishna conscious in a positive way. What is real pure bhakti? Pure bhakti means thinking about Krishna and serving him in a favorable manner. So therefore, we don't accept dvesh, bhai. These things are okay for liberation, but higher than liberation is direct relationship with Krishna. As Mother Yashoda, as Nanda Baba, as Lalita Vishaka, as Radharani, like in that same mood as his associates. That is the real Krishna consciousness movement. We're not actually seeking liberation. We're seeking what is beyond liberation. Like Mother Yashoda is a mother to Krishna, we can also be like a mother to Krishna. Putana achieved that destination. We can be like a mother. We can be like a friend, like his cowherd boys. We can be like the gopis. This is our main Krishna consciousness. Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. Becoming, this is what we generally teach. How you can become a friend of Krishna or have developed parental affection for Krishna as Gopal, right? Or as the gopis worshiping Gopinath. This is pure Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada says here, he quotes a verse. It's very important because a lot of times people say, Krishna consciousness is only about regulative ritualistic worship and sadhana practice, what we call Vaidhi. It's true, but it's not fully true. What do I mean? Krishna consciousness, the practice for us is the sadhana, the process of practice by doing regulative performance of bhakti. That means every day we chant some japa, we watch the arati of Krishna, we offer our food to Krishna, we hear about Krishna. This is called regulative practice. But there's the action and there's the mood. The mood is rag, attraction. We want to develop a mood of attraction to Krishna. That is called rag. So our process of pure Krishna consciousness, as described here by Srila Prabhupada, is Vaidhi aiming towards rag. We don't skip Vaidhi because it's said in Shastra. Shruti smriti pancharatram vidimvida ekantikir hari bhaktir utpat eva kevalam. If we give up following proper Hari Bhakti, like we don't follow Ekadashi. Someone did that. They said, oh, we don't need to follow Ekadashi. We're one-pointed devotees. They were rejected from the Gaudiya Samaj society. Oh, you're not following Ekadashi. You're engaged in illicit activities. You're smoking and drinking. You need to follow Vaidhi. Therefore, we don't take intoxication. We don't take alcohol, any kind of drugs. We don't eat meat. We don't, we follow Ekadashi. We worship Tulasi. This is all regulative practice. But it's aiming towards attraction to Krishna. And some people say, no, first we must give up calm. First we must give up our anarthas. First we must give up our lower tendencies. But this is not what Bhagavatam says. This is not what Srila Prabhupada says. Srila Prabhupada says, if you listen to Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, which may seem to be lusty activities, the lusty desires in your heart, this is Prabhupada's purport, not the direct translation. The lusty desires in your heart, which constitute the heart disease of the conditioned soul, will be vanquished, and he will become a most exalted devotee of the Lord. Prabhupada is giving this example because ultimately the gopis, their love is pure. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says the gopis' love is like molten gold, pure gold, no contamination. But he's explaining like this so that conditioned souls, ordinary people can understand, even if we develop lusty desires towards Krishna, we can achieve salvation. But the specialty of the gopis is here, Prabhupada says, if we listen to the katha about Krishna and the gopis, our own heart will be purified. Hrid rogam, what is described to be like what we were talking about last night, right? With your, like in the evening time when we're having dinner. Why are people having bad character in this world? Why do people, things like the Me Too movement, they're there because people have no control over their character and they have so much lust in their heart. And they're not able to control that, so they express it in different ways. So we cannot uproot that. We have to replace it with something higher and better. Our Gurudev would say, don't wait for the river to dry up to cross the river. There's a bridge, go across the bridge. There's a boat, take a boat. So this verse is given for that. This is real Krishna consciousness. Lust, greed, avarice, all these things in the heart, which is like the poison. When you churn the ocean, they'll come out. But churning the ocean, what is the process of churning the ocean? Shrindvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyantastohya badrani vidunoti suhritsatam. This is churning the ocean. Shrindvatam, hearing Krishna katha. Shrindvata svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana. By hearing that auspicious sound vibration of Krishna katha, hridyanoti abadrani, all inauspicious things in the heart will be uprooted. Then they'll come out like the poison. Very good. Come out and get taken away. Lord Shiva will destroy them. Everything abadrani, nashta preshva badreshu nityam bhagavata sevya. Bhagavat uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By hearing this katha, all auspiciousness will arise, all inauspiciousness will flee. So hearing Krishna katha, that's why we do these meetings. Hearing Krishna katha is like the sunrise. When the sun rises, the darkness dissipates. We can fight darkness our whole life. We're talking about social work. We can find all the ills and evils of the world and fight them. But we can't solve all the problems. We solve them by bringing light. When light comes, darkness goes. What is that light? Krishna Katha. That is the real light in our life. That awakens our spiritual potential. Then it will say fully realized their potential and became a lover of God and a welfare worker of the whole world, well-wisher of the whole world. We want that to be written on our gravestone. Well-wisher of the world, lover of God. So Srila Prabhupada says here, the best form of Krishna Katha is hearing about Krishna and the gopis. Srila Prabhupada writes this directly here. And there's another verse that's very sweet, because we were talking about this Kumari as well. He talks, the reason I'm talking about alchemy is he mentions it right here in the purport. So I'll just read this purport a little bit too. We have a few more minutes. The next purport is very sweet. Prabhupada talks about developing your attraction to Krishna. So this is Krishna consciousness. So he says in this purport, it's very important. Purport to verse 31. Different persons achieve different types of mukti, liberation. Sayujya, salokya, sarupya, samipya, and sarshti, according to their own intense desire, which is called bhav. So intense absorption. However, Rupa Goswami says, pure devotional service, that is real Krishna consciousness because it awakens our purest relationship with Krishna. If you hate Krishna and you get liberation, you'll achieve like Sayujya Mukti, which means you'll merge into the impersonal Brahman. And you'll achieve some bliss, but that Brahmananda is like a speck compared to Premananda, the bliss of a loving relationship with Krishna. That is our objective as Gaudiya Vaishnavas. The gopis, by their lusty desires, which are based on their intense love for Krishna, became the most beloved devotees of the Lord. Although the gopis at Vrindavan expressed their lusty desires in relationship with a paramour or Parakya Ras, so he's talking about Parakya Ras, they actually had no lusty desires. So I want to finish here. There's so much nice things to read about. We'll continue next week and we'll continue here at the ashram. We'll continue at the ashram. I just want to finish with this one point. Krishna consciousness is based on a verse by Srila Rupa Goswami. The Krishna consciousness movement established by Srila Swami Prabhupada is established based on a verse of Srila Rupa Goswami. And Srila Rupa Goswami gave two important verses in this context. The most often quoted verse of Srila Prabhupada and our Gurudev is this verse, Anya Bilashta Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhanavratam Anukulena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Rutama. This is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1:111. Pure bhakti means favorable to Krishna. So ultimately, we're not interested in approaching Krishna through a mode of enmity, hatred or enmity or malice. Not even like Kubja, who had lust for Krishna, but it was contaminated. It wasn't pure. It was samanjasa, ordinary, for our own selfish desire. We are interested in serving Krishna, loving Krishna without any ulterior motivation, without any expectation of reward, simply love. Pure, spotless love, favorable to him. Like the gopis, therefore Krishna said, "O gopis, I cannot repay you. Napare ham nirabadya samyujam." So sadhu krityam, O gopis, you are the topmost sadhus. I can never repay you. Krishna is always trying to repay everyone. Anyone does anything for him, he tries to give back tenfold. He wants to give back tenfold, but the gopis give up everything for him. Pati sutanvaya bratri bandivan ativalangite antachitagata. Krishna says, I cannot repay you. I'm indebted to you forever. Even in that, the gopis say, oh, Krishna. Even in that, they win because they say, Krishna, we are not your family. We are not your friends. How can you be indebted to family and friends? And even then, Krishna says, yes, I am defeated. I am defeated. And he bows before the gopis. I am defeated. Why? Because of their spotless love. So Rupa Goswami says, pure bhakti, pure love, not trying to get some opulence from Krishna, not to get beauty and fame and wealth, not to get material desires fulfilled, not even to get liberation, gyan, karami, adi, not to get yogic powers, simply love for Krishna expressed through our service without expectation, then Krishna says, I cannot repay you, you are mine. And he embraces us as his own. This is the story of Prahlad and Nrsingadev. Prahlad, Nrsingadev appeared and protected him. And he asked, what can I give you as a boon? Prahlad Maharaj said, I'm not a businessman. I've worshipped you for some, expecting some remuneration. Oh, Krishna, I'm simply yours. I'm simply yours. I'm simply yours. Hey Krishna Kurana Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate. So this is the Krishna consciousness movement. Rupa Goswami said one more verse. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitamati Kriyatam Jadi Kutopi Labhyate Tatra Lolyam Apimulyam Ekalam Janma Koti Sukriterna Labhyate. Pure Krishna consciousness means finding someone who is Krishna conscious, being in their association, they will make you Krishna conscious by their association. Someone who loves God can awaken the love for God within you. That's Krishna consciousness movement. How to develop a favorable sentiment of love and devotion towards Krishna, expressed through your various emotions and through your activities. It should be like a stream of honey unbroken, or ghee, like liquid ghee that is being poured from a jar, not chunks. Krishna consciousness is described to be like a stream of honey or oil that is unbroken. So this is the point. And I didn't really think so much about this before the class, so I'm trying to get the ideas out. The thesis, I want to leave us with this idea. The thesis is that what is the real Krishna consciousness movement? Vaidhi Bhakti without rag is not as good as one-pointed enmity towards Krishna. Because, and there's a verse in the Bhagavatam. If I can find this verse, we were reading it yesterday. It said that one-pointed enmity, like a stream of oil, a stream of honey. Shishupal comes, I hate Krishna. I'm afraid of Krishna. Negative emotion. Even negative emotion that's completely absorbed in Krishna. If it's one-pointed and like an unbroken stream of honey, it's described, it gives you liberation.
It's better than Vaidhi.
Not on its own, because it said that Vaidhi is based on, the problem is we worship Krishna for 5 minutes. The rest of the day, we're thinking about Maya. We're thinking about our material things. So if we're completely absorbed Krishna consciousness, that form of Krishna consciousness, what our form of Krishna consciousness movement is based towards attraction to Krishna. This is here in the, okay, listen to this, Narad Muni. It's a very interesting verse. I didn't ever think of this before reading this verse yesterday. Text 27, chapter 1. Narad Muni said, by devotional service, one cannot achieve such intense absorption in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as one can through enmity toward him. That is my opinion. It's very interesting for Narad Muni to say this. What he's saying is that it's like, oh, once in a while I'll go and do arti. Once in a while I'll offer some puja. But most of the time, I don't think about Krishna. Most of the time I think about my family, my work, my society, what movie I'm going to watch, what party I'm going to go to. I'm thinking about that. So he said, Kamsa, Shishupal are better because they're one-pointedly absorbed in their enmity towards Krishna. So the thesis is real, pure Krishna consciousness means pure absorption in Krishna through love. That's why the gopis' love is described to be the highest, because they love Krishna purely and they're purely attracted to Krishna. And their love isn't actually lust, it's pure love. Only how can I please my beloved? You're calling me, so how can I go and serve you? So this is Vaidhi pointed towards Rag. That is the pure Krishna consciousness movement as described by Rupa Goswami and as described by our scriptures and our gurus. That is the pure Krishna consciousness movement. Vaidhi alone, then all the other sampradayas follow that. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Raga Marga Bhakti Loke Kurite Pracharan. Rashika Shekara Krishna Parama Karun E Dui Hetu Kore Lila Udgam. Krishna came again as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Radharani's mood and complexion to give Raga Marga Bhakti Loke Kurite Pracharan, to preach this path of spontaneous love for God. That is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, which the Prabhupada also comments upon that. So our Krishna consciousness movement is based on, we follow our practice, but we develop attraction to Krishna. And how do we do that? We hear about Krishna from devotees, from sadhus, and we sing about Krishna, we take Krishna prasad, and we give this message to the world. That is the highest form of charity. Because we started at 7:07, we finished at 8:06. So I'm staying within our time limit. Any comments? Okay, so next Thursday, you're going to join?
Yes, of course.
Okay, and you can start, when we do it, you can do a kirtan. You'll learn how to sing kirtan. You know some kirtans, right? So you can sing in the program also. We met Jasmine in her apartment in Brooklyn and we did kirtan there, like 3-4 brahmacharis. We did a kirtan there, remember? And we lit some candles for Krishna. All right, so we will be in touch, everyone. Thank you for joining this week's Bhakti Club. Please forgive me if I spoke anything out of place. I'm just trying to repeat what we read from our scripture and what we've heard from our teachers. And anyhow, remember Krishna, become absorbed in Krishna. Out of affection, out of love, that will give you a beautiful thing. It's beyond liberation. Beyond liberation. Krishna says, Diyamanam nagrananti vinamat sevanam yata. My devotees don't accept. I try to give them liberation. I try to give them opulence, a planet like me, a form like me, opulence like me. Sayujya, Sarupya, Samipya, Salokya, Sarsti. 5 kinds of liberations. The devotees say, no, I don't want it. Diyamanam nagrananti. They only want pure bhakti. It's beyond liberation. That's Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitamati. That's Krishna Bhavanamrita Sangha. A society based on absorption with love for Krishna. That's Krishna consciousness. What does it mean to be absorbed in Krishna with love? That means rag. Rag is attraction to Krishna. That is what Mahaprabhu, when he took sannyas, he said, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Kaha jao, kaha pao, Brajendra Nandan, Brajendra Nandan, Vina Fateh Moraman. Until I can find Krishna, it's like my heart is breaking in two. Swarup Damodar, his friend, said, Krishna is in your heart. He started to scratch his chest and rip it open. And then he held his hand and said, no, 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 no. He's everywhere. Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? That is Krishna consciousness.
And liberation comes as a byproduct.
Liberation comes automatically. Krishna says, Bhukti, Mukti, Jan, Palaya. I easily give you Bhukti and Mukti. But my Bhakti is very special and very hidden. So thank you for joining us this week. Be in touch. Radhisham. What are you doing this weekend, Jasmine? You want to go to Baltimore Rath Yatra?
This weekend, I think I might have to confirm because I have.
No problem. Okay. Hare Krishna. Okay. Dandavat pranams. We'll continue after the class. Radhe, Radhe, everyone. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks for joining.
Thank
So
you.
bhakticlub.com.
No, it's just a